I first met my ex's sister back in high school when she started going out with my best buddy during our senior year. She got pregnant and they tied the knot. Shortly after high school, I enlisted in the military. I served for 6 years before getting medically discharged. That's when my ex and I started dating. I landed a decent job that required me to travel a couple of times a month for up to 10 days of a stretch. While we were doing some last minute wedding prep, a text from her sister popped up on her phone. It read, "Have you told your boyfriend about your fling with your ex? If you don't spill the beans tonight, I will tomorrow." I asked her, "What's this about?" She tried to brush it off. I kept pushing her for the truth, and she finally admitted that she had bumped into him during her bachelorette party, but insisted that nothing happened. It was a clear lie. When she fell asleep, I decided to go through her phone. I found texts and pictures with him dating back to when we first started seeing each other. They would hook up every time I was away on work trips. I sent the evidence to my phone. I woke her up, confronted her, and ended the relationship right there. She tried to play the victim, but I showed her one of the screenshots of her and her ex in my bed. I told her, "Stephanie sure looks a lot like your ex-boyfriend." She started crying, and I gently ushered her out the door. I called off all the wedding plans and enlisted some help to call the guests and inform them that the wedding was off. My friend's wife revealed that during the bachelorette party, she had caught them sneaking off together and getting intimate. She confronted them and gave my ex the choice to either confess to me herself or she would do it. She had no idea that this was an ongoing affair. Now let's talk about the honeymoon. I had planned it meticulously to make it perfect for my ex. It was a 10-day trip to a foreign country that she had always described as a once-in-a-lifetime bucket list destination. There were luxurious hotels, amazing experiences, and overall, it was her dream vacation. I had already shelled out about 10 grand for the wedding and would lose even more if I canceled the honeymoon trip. I decided to offer the trip to them, knowing they never had a honeymoon or any real vacations. Since they married young and had kids, it seemed right. Plus, they just saved me a lot of money and hassle. They happily accepted. They managed to get time off work and arrange care for the kids for the duration of the trip. When my ex found out she lost it, she bombarded me with calls and texts, calling me all sorts of names for doing this to her. She kept saying that it was her dream vacation and then I had ruined her life. I received messages from her friends and some family members she had lied to, blaming me for the breakup. Her ex even texted me, calling me less of a man, and then threatened me. He must have been with her the previous night, as he shouldn't have had my number. I haven't responded to any of them, but I'm left wondering, am I the a-hole for giving my cheating ex-fiancé his dream honeymoon to her sister and my best friend? Update. The funny thing about me is that I can stay cool as a cucumber even in a war zone, but that night I was a total wreck. I wasn't thinking straight. When you receive a barrage of messages from people you thought cared about you, it really throws you for a loop. On a positive note, I get regular checkups due to my job, including blood work. But after all this, I went and got specifically tested for any sexually transmitted infections, and thankfully everything came back negative. I took some of your advice and got a restraining order against the other guy for his threats. It helps to have good connections with local law enforcement. I tell you, you guys were right. I didn't really have to lift a finger for the truth to come out. The night after she found out about the honeymoon, she showed up at her sister's place, banging on the door and demanding all the trip details. When she was denied, she lost it. She was screaming, yelling, and eventually got detained when the neighbors called the cops. The cherry on top during her meltdown, she confessed that she was just using me, that she never loved me, and admitted to sleeping around behind my back. Did I mention it was all caught on camera? Thank you. Doorbell cam. They posted it. I started getting apology messages from her family, but nothing from her friends. So I sent them screenshots of the messages and a PG-rated photo. The messages also included her bad-mouthing most of them. After that, the other guy showed up at my house trying to break in and talk to me. He was drunk. I gave him a light lesson in self-defense and carefully restrained him. The police came and he was arrested. I also have cameras with audio, so he's looking at charges for assault, attempted breaking and entering and violating a restraining order. So she's lost most of her family, friends, spent a night in jail, and her affair partner is heading to jail. I managed to land a contract for a month, which includes bonuses and a chance to get out of the country. I'm hoping this will help clear my head, and when I return, I'll be in a better place mentally. Story 2. As for my friend and his wife, they left today, Monday, for the trip. I managed to get some of the more personal details of the trip changed to their names. I also arranged for the hotel to place a cheap camera and a note saying, "Remember to make lasting memory and document the journey." Second story. All right, folks, gather around for a story that's about to be as scandalous as a sizzling beef patty on a hot skillet. Now, let me start by saying that I'm usually a laid-back kind of guy. Always have been. But my ex-wife, She had a different perspective on our marriage. She seemed to treat it more like a lucid question rather than a true commitment. Quite a character, I tell you. It all began when I discovered that my dear spouse was having an affair with a fellow member from our fancy country club. Can you believe it? Our own damn country club, where we spent countless Sundays playing golf and enduring those never-ending brunches. And guess who it was? None other than Frank, the husband of that obnoxious duo, Frank and Darla. Quite the soap opera, isn't it? Now, how did I uncover this secret? Well, it wasn't through some sneaky private investigator or a sudden burst of supernatural intuition. It was all thanks to her own incompetence. She had foolishly stored revealing photos and lovely emails in a secret email account on her phone, thinking she had covered her tracks. She believed she was the modern-day Mata Hari, but boy, was she wrong. When I confronted her, she played the innocent card, denying everything until I laid my cards on the table. The photos, the emails. It was like witnessing a fragile porcelain doll shatter into pieces. All her facade crumbled, and she begged for my forgiveness. Quite the performance worthy of an Oscar, but I wasn't buying any tickets to that show. I made it clear to her that she was only sorry because she got caught, not because she genuinely regretted her actions. Her face turned pale as white as a sheep. She asked me what my intentions were. I responded with a satisfying silence. It felt like being in a battle and you wouldn't give away your strategies to the enemy, right? That's exactly how I saw it. I had declared a silent war that lasted a week. I acted as if everything was normal, while she was a bundle of nerves, stumbling over her words and making more mistakes than a beginner juggler. Behind the scenes, I remained calm and collected. Setting my plan into motion, I initiated the process of filing for divorce and had my lawyer working on the necessary details. I hadn't revealed this little piece of information to her yet, keeping my cards close to my chest. Then the perfect opportunity presented itself. The quarterly banquet at the country club. Frank, the club president, and his irritating wife Darla were always by his side. I volunteered to give a speech at the event. I could practically hear my wife's heart pounding in her chest when I informed her. It was like watching a deer caught in the headlights, fear evident in her eyes. The day arrived and there we were, dressed up to the nines, sitting among the town's elite. As I stood up to take the stage, I noticed my wife's knuckles turning white, clutching the tablecloth as if it was her lifeline. I began my speech by discussing the importance of taking control of one's life and not allowing circumstances beyond our control to shape or define us. Talk about irony, huh? The highlight of my speech involved distributing envelopes to everyone in the room with strict instructions to wait for my signal before opening them. The tension in the air was so thick you could practically slice it with a knife. All eyes anxiously shifted between the envelopes and me. My wife's expression resembled someone who had just encountered a ghost. Beads of sweat trickled down her forehead as she tightly held onto her unopened envelope while my speech reached its conclusion. Finally, I gave the command. The room fell into a hushed silence as members of the country club tore open their envelopes and then chaos erupted. The envelopes contained the very pictures and emails I had discovered, exposing Frank's betrayal for all to see. My wife's deceit was laid bare and poor Darla was left in a state of shock, witnessing her husband's treachery. All the skeletons that had been hiding in the closet were now dancing under the harsh spotlight. Frank appeared as if he had just swallowed a bug, his face turning a sickly shade of green. As for Darla, she stared at the photos as if they were some extraterrestrial artifact, her face transitioning from pale to flaming red. In my wife, well, she found herself right in the eye of the storm, her wide eyes reflecting pure horror. The aftermath was just as chaotic as you can imagine. Frank, the once beloved club president, was swiftly stripped of his title, faster than a race car, zooming down a straightway in the span of a single evening. He went from being the top dog to the town's biggest outcast. Darla was inconsolable, her sobs echoing through the hall. The realization that her husband had been playing her for a fool hit her harder than a ton of bricks. Now let's talk about my wife. She was quite the social butterfly, always surrounded by her circles. But all of that came crashing down in an instant. It was like witnessing a queen being dethroned. The news spread like wildfire throughout our town, and she became known as the Home. The shame and humiliation were evident on her face. And I have to admit, I took quite a bit of satisfaction in that. Okay, let's be honest. I reveled in it. But the icing on the cake was when I announced my resignation from the club. Can you imagine? Not only did they lose their president, but they were also losing a long-standing member like myself. The room fell into a heavy silence. So quiet you could hear a pin drop. My wife looked at me with a mix of shock, betrayal, and desperation. But I had cut all ties with the club and with her. I packed up my life, took my online business, and relocated to a new city. It was a fresh start. Leaving behind all the drama, lies, and heartache, my wife was left to face the consequences of her choices. And as for Frank, well, let's just say he had his own battles to fight. As for me, I finally gained my freedom from a toxic relationship in a suffocating town. In the end, you could say that my revenge was also satisfying, like indulging in a warm chocolate souffle fresh out of the oven. There's something satisfying about reclaiming control of your life and standing up for yourself. Maybe some would call it petty or harsh, but in that moment I felt empowered and back in the driver's seat. No regrets, just valuable lessons learned in a future filled with endless possibilities. Now let's catch up on what's happened 1 year later. Time for an update on everyone's lives. Let's start with the aftermath of my little surprise at the country club. Surprisingly, the divorce proceedings went smoother than anticipated. Thankfully, I had already established my online business before I met my wife, so I retained full ownership. She ended up with just a monthly maintenance payment, which, thanks to the success of my business, was more than manageable. Let's call it the price of pursuing love. As for my ex-wife, well, her attempts to find employment in a town where her reputation was tarnished didn't pan out. It seems being labeled the town homewrecker isn't exactly a desirable quality for potential employers. Eventually, she made the decision to pack up and leave, perhaps in search of greener pastures where judgment was less harsh. And as for Frank, oh boy, he got the short end of the stick. His divorce was far from favorable, resulting in him losing a significant portion of his business to dog. It just goes to show that old saying is true. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Frank had to start over and rebuild everything from scratch. It's pretty wild how the order and timing of events can completely alter the trajectory of your life, huh? Now let's move on to the more enjoyable part of this update, shall we? I've started dating this amazing woman who brings a breath of fresh air into my life compared to my ex-wife. But let me tell you, marriage is the last thing on my mind. Milk. Been there, done that. Got the souvenir. Right now, I'm perfectly content with dating, growing my business, and embracing the fun aspects of life. In fact, I've reignited my passion for playing the piano, something I had set aside during my marriage. It's incredible what you can achieve when you're not constantly tiptoeing through the minefield of matrimony. My current dream is to form an 80 seconds retro wave band just for the sheer joy of it. Who knows? Maybe I'll even share some of our tracks here someday. So there you have it, folks. My life has taken a complete 180-degree turn, but I've emerged on the other side as a better and happier person with a renewed lease on life. Story 3. Always remember that it's never too late to regain control and live life on your own terms. Well, luckily, Frank managed to escape with less damage than most people would. What do you all think? That revenge result was quite satisfying, but do you have any ideas on how it could have been even more impactful? I guess I'm not really sure what I'm hoping to get out of this post. Maybe I'm looking for someone who can make sense of why someone would cheat just 3 months before their wedding and with a total deadbeat at that. I thought this might be a good place to spill the whole story and get it off my chest. So, rewind to 6 months ago. I walked in on my fiancée in bed with my buddy's brother just 3 months before our wedding, and a few months before that, my fiancée had lost her job. Ever since I've known her, she's had a bit of a rough time holding down a job. She's never managed to stick with one for more than a year. Either she gets fired or she quits. And it was never her fault. Or so she said. I always believed her because, well, I loved her. When you're in love with someone, you tend to give them the benefit of the doubt, and you put up with a lot more of their nonsense. I ended up giving her a part-time job at my shop since I was the owner. It didn't take long for me to realize why she had such a hard time keeping a job. She was always late, always had an excuse, and never had the discipline to finish a task. She'd rather chat and socialize than work, but I looked past all these flaws because, well, I was in love with her. She was my first love, my first kiss, my first everything. We've grown so much together over the past 6 years. Sure, we had our rocky moments, but I genuinely believed she was the one I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. I couldn't and still can't imagine anyone else in my life. But she's left me with no other choice. 3 weeks before D-Day, we had our wedding shower. It was nerve-wracking, stressful and all that, but we really did have a great time. We appreciated all the family and friends who came to show their support. It was our first event leading up to our May wedding, and it made everything feel much more real. During that time, we were often visiting the house of my best friend, whose younger brother had recently moved in with him. My fiancée struck up a friendship with him. This 21-year-old, let's call him Brendan now. Brandon is my best friend's younger brother, so even though some folks might raise an eyebrow at their partner being pals with someone of the opposite sex, I didn't think much of it. Brandon was living with his brother in a 2-bedroom house. He didn't have a job, so his brother was letting him crash there since he had the extra room, and Brandon wasn't keen on living with their mom anymore. Brandon's a pretty quiet, shy, and socially awkward guy, my fiancée being the social butterfly that she would always say she was just trying to help him come out of his shell whenever she hung out with him. I'm a business owner running a shop, and I work long hours, especially with the wedding expenses looming. Most of the guests coming to the wedding are from my fiancé's side. The only income my fiancée has is what I pay her for, her part-time work with me. So I'm footing the bill for 100% of the wedding expenses. All my fiancée was responsible for was the planning. My best friend is also in the same business as me, albeit on a smaller scale, and we sometimes share or borrow equipment from each other a few months before our wedding. My fiancée started taking some hours off work. Her go-to excuse was always that she was planning something for our wedding. She'd use any excuse she could, and our wedding was no different. I knew that was a load of baloney, but I usually let it slide and ignored her because I didn't need her help most of the time until it became a habit. One day I needed to grab something from my friend's house. He'd borrowed one of my tools and left it in his garage. He was swamped with work, and since I needed it as a peek, I decided to swing by and pick it up myself. He told me that Brandon was home, but he might be sleeping because he's jobless, so he didn't want me knocking on his door all day. So he gave me his keys to let myself in and grab what I needed from his garage. I closed my shop before I left because I didn't have anyone to watch my store. My fiancée made her usual excuse that she was going to meet the planner for our wedding. It was supposed to be a quick drive to my friend's house. His garage door wasn't working, so I had to go through his front door, then through his corridor to access his garage. As I was walking towards the garage, that's when I heard moaning. It was clearly the sound of a woman. I smiled because I thought Brandon had scored. I didn't think he was capable of pulling a woman because he was so quiet and shy. Never in my wildest dreams did I expect the woman to be my fiancée. I moved through the garage as quietly as possible to not make any disturbance after I grabbed what I needed. I headed back to the front door to exit the house, but stopped halfway when I recognized the sound of my fiancée. Immediately, it all added up in my head. I placed the tool on the corridor and slowly tiptoed closer to the room where the sound was coming from. The room wasn't far from the corridor, so after a few steps, I was right at the front door. Another clue that confirmed it was my fiancée was her shoes at the front of the door. Now I was certain it was her, and I was close enough to recognize that my fiancée was the woman moaning. I twisted the doorknob to open it, but it was locked. I had to force my way in and broke the lock. As soon as I forced myself in, I saw my fiancée trying to cover herself behind Brant. Brandon was holding a clothes hanger to protect themselves. It's kind of funny looking back, but it wasn't funny to me at the time. When they realized the person who just barged in was me, my fiancée stepped out from behind him and started apologizing. At first, she said it was a drunken mistake. It had never happened before. She knew she messed up and so on. I asked her if this is what she's been doing when she leaves the shop. Is this her idea of wedding planning? I asked her how long this had been going on, and she lied, saying it was the first time I wanted to give Brandon a piece of my mind. But the kid is so weak and fragile that it's hard to believe he made a move on my fiancée. I figured she was the one who initiated it. I remember feeling a deep pain, realizing that for the past few months, I'd worked so hard to make enough money to pay for the wedding. And here she was messing around with another guy. Nothing hurts more than finding out that all my efforts have been in vain. We were arguing in Brandon's room when he slipped away. I realized that having a conversation with her was pointless because she was lying through her teeth, even though she'd been caught red-handed. The more she lied, the angrier I became, and it started affecting me physically. My knees were shaky, and they felt like they would buckle. I started hyperventilating and stormed out of my friend's house to get some fresh air. I rang my buddy and spilled the beans about what I just discovered. I asked him how long he'd known about this. He swore on his daughter's life that he was as shocked as I was. I was at a loss for what to do next. I didn't feel like heading back to work that day, so I hit the bar to grab a drink and clear my head. My friend tried to reach me, but I was too lost in my thoughts to answer. I felt like a complete fool for not suspecting anything. I felt like a dunce for trying to marry someone I thought I knew. After being together for 6 years, I thought that was enough time. My love for her had blinded me to her true colors. She could be selfish and demanding, and sometimes she'd put me down in front of our friends. But man, I was so head over heels for her that I didn't notice these flaws. All her negative traits started to stand out. Things that I was totally blind to before I caught her cheating. Now they were as clear as day. I'd fooled myself into thinking that her job hopping was because her bosses were hitting on her, and when she turned them down, they'd fire her. That was one of the many excuses she'd feed me, and I swallowed it hook, line, and sinker because I was in love with her. In the days that followed, She tried to convince me that we didn't have to call off the wedding and that she would never talk to him again. She said that I'm the one she wanted to be with, and that she did this because I wasn't giving her the words of affirmation and affection she craved. And then I was always working. I told her that someone has to work around here. I was working for us to have a wedding, and Brandon was always available because he's jobless. I can't help but believe that this affair has been going on for a while. She insists. I walked in on the first time, but they'd been spending a lot more time together lately, and I've tried to overlook it, as I always thought they were just best friends. Once I told her that we had to part ways and I wanted her out of my house. Her whole demeanor changed. Then it became, now that I've had time away from this house, I realized this isn't what I want. And I've been a coward by not telling you I've not wanted to be with you for a while. Honestly, it's painful. I found out. So she never wanted to be with me. Yet she was about to marry me in 3 months. We've already sent invitations to family and friends. Clearly, she was with me for what I could provide for her. She seemed to regret it at first, but that regret and guilt that she felt the first day has completely seemed to dwindle away because it became clear to her that we are no longer going to get married and that I was going to kick her out of my house. She tried to rile me up by saying that she was going to move in with Brenda Brandon, who's unemployed, shy, and can't even hold down a job, is mooching off his brother, and she's planning to move in with him. Brandon is living off his older brother, and they're both going to leech off him. I told her that she didn't think her affair through. I had a hunch that my best friend wouldn't risk our friendship by letting her stay while she was packing her things to leave my house. I reminded her that she was fired. She retorted by saying that my business sucks and spouting all sorts of nasty things about my business. The same business that has been feeding her for the past month. Fast forward 3 weeks later. She's moved the last of her things out of my house and taken 2 of our 4 dogs with her. My house was a wreck as she took all of our living room furniture, our bedroom, TV, dining room table, etc. A grant. She paid for some of it prior to us moving in together, and some was given to us by her godmother. However, she is taking every possible thing that she's justified in taking. She admitted to me that she and Brandon had serious feelings for each other. They continued to be intimate since I caught them the first time, and they continued to see each other for a few weeks after. After she moved out, she seems to show no remorse for what she did, and seems acting happier. Living in this fun little fling with this guy who has no job, no education, and lives with his brother. Fast forward a bit, and their cash flow started drying up, and they both couldn't land jobs. I had given her everything she could possibly need. I cared for her even stepping into a parent-like role, which I think slowly eroded our love and affection. But the love I had for her is now a sad story, best left in the past. She's diagnosed with severe bipolar disorder and struggles a lot with depression and anxiety. I've done my best to help her with her mental health over the past 6 years, but I think it's taken a toll on my own mental state. But that was just one of the sacrifices I made because I was so head over heels in love with her for weeks after we split. She tried to move in with Brenda, but my best mate wasn't having it. When Brandon started sneaking her in behind my best mate's back, he booted both of them out, and Brandon ended up moving back in with his mom. It took about 2 months for the rose-colored glasses to come off, and then she realized she'd made a mistake. She called me and apologized, but I felt like my trust had been shattered, and I needed time to sort through my feelings. I think she only felt regret because she had to move back in with her parents and start job hunting. I was crushed when I caught her cheating, and the wedding cancellation hit her heart because most of the invites were sent to her family members. She tried to spin lies about why we broke up, even claiming we were both cheating on each other. But I sent a Facebook message to all her friends and relatives that I knew telling them the truth. I took a financial hit because I'd already put down payments on some of the wedding expenses. Over the past few months, I've been focusing on myself, hanging out with friends and family, and starting to piece my life back together. I thought about my ex-fiancée a lot. I knew I couldn't just erase what had happened about 2 months ago. She reached out to me out of the blue. She apologized again for what she had done and confessed that she had made a massive mistake. She said that she still had feelings for me and wanted to try to mend things. She told me that she and Brandon were no longer a thing. She suggested that we should take it slow and rebuild trust, promising that this time things would be different and she would do whatever it took to repair our relationship. I told her that I've moved on, and there's no one doing the betrayal she put me through. I told her that I've moved on and there's no one doing the betrayal she put me through. Started seeing someone else. So, I'm 28 years old and married to my wife, Haley, who's also 28. We've been married for a few years now, and a couple of months back, we welcomed our first baby boy into the world. We decided to share some pictures of him on Facebook a few weeks ago, but looking back, that might not have been the best idea. My relatives ended up seeing those photos and sent them to my dad. My dad and I haven't talked in almost 10 years, ever since he decided not to help me with my college tuition, while he completely covered my cousin's tuition without him even asking for it. I always knew my dad liked to support his brother, but paying for my cousin's college felt like he was taking things way too far. Just to give you a bit more background, my cousin Peter and I were born pretty close together, just a few months apart. Growing up, Peter and I had this kind of rivalry, almost like we were siblings, even though we weren't. We were both always trying to get my dad's attention. My mom left my dad when I was just a baby because she felt she wasn't ready to be a mom, so it was just me and my dad after that. Meanwhile, Peter had both his parents, but they were always super busy with their work and didn't give him much attention. That's probably why he was always looking to my dad for that. My dad was a big shot in sales at his company, and my uncle and aunt were always tied up running their own cafe. Alright, so here's the deal. My dad's brother and his wife ran a cafe, but it wasn't doing too hot, so they often needed money help from my dad. My dad had a pretty good job and was able to lend them a hand. I never really thought much of it or got upset because it didn't cross my mind that one day my dad might pick them over me, his own kid. Back in high school, my cousin Peter and I were kinda neck and neck grade-wise, but he struggled a bit more, especially with math. By the end of the year, I kinda pulled ahead, which felt like a big win for me. That is, until everything went sideways. My dad dropped the bomb that he wouldn't be paying for my college, suggesting I should get a scholarship. But he was all in for covering Peter's tuition because Peter's folks were having money troubles. I couldn't believe it, and argued with my dad tons about this decision, but he wouldn't budge. He even said I should be more understanding and think of Peter like a brother. When I pointed out that Peter and I weren't actually brothers since we're not related by blood, my dad got super mad. He said if I was going to talk like that, I might as well move out. I was already super upset with him for not helping me with college and feeling like he chose Peter over me. So, without really planning it out, I just left and crashed with some friends for a while. So, after that whole thing went down, I never really got to hang out or chat with my dad again. He did try to hit me up a few times, wanting me to move back home and all, but he never once mentioned helping me out with college funds. I gave it my best shot to snag a student loan or something along those lines, but it was like hitting a brick wall because I was on my own, with no grown-ups in my corner to back me up. That led to me having to bail on college just a couple of days in because my pockets were pretty much empty. Finding a job was next on my list, but man, it felt like every job out there either paid peanuts or expected you to have no life outside of work, which meant bye-bye class time. It was a super messed up spot to be in. But I didn't just sit around feeling sorry for myself. I managed to land this temporary gig at a company, even though it wasn't paying much. I had to grind like crazy there because I had bills piling up, rent, groceries, you name it. Doing all this solo was no walk in the park. I was pretty stressed knowing that if I didn't keep up with my share of the bills, my roommates weren't going to be too thrilled. So I had to hustle hard without any shortcuts or handouts. But as luck would have it, things started to turn around for me. All that hard work began to pay off, and I eventually landed a much better position within the same company. That job turned out to be more than just a paycheck. It's where I met my amazing wife, and now we've got this awesome little kid together. So when I look back, I can't say it was all rough times. Things kind of fell into place in a way I never expected. Even though I missed out on the whole college experience and the life I thought was waiting for me, I ended up pushing through way harder than most folks my age had to. But hey, it's all been worth it in the end. Right now, I'm actually okay with how things turned out because I believe all the hard work I put in has shaped me into who I am today. And honestly, I don't have any regrets. I've heard that Peter, too, has his own job at some company and has a family, but apparently he doesn't make as much money as I do. That must be kind of embarrassing for him, I guess. Some of my buddies have seen where Peter lives and how he spends his days, and they say it's nowhere near as cool as my setup, even though he's the one who went to college. I felt a bit of a boost in my pride when I heard that Peter wasn't doing as well as me. I was so close to calling up my dad to see what he thought about that, but I ended up not doing it because I didn't want to stoop to that level. Basically, it felt like I came out on top and Peter didn't, even though it seemed like everything was in his favor from the start. That was a win in my book. I didn't feel the need to rub it in their faces or anything, but over time, my dad kept trying to patch things up with me. He remembered my birthday, Christmas, and New Year's every single year without fail. I never responded to him, but I also didn't cut him off completely. Deep down, I was waiting for him to just say sorry even once. The craziest part and the thing that bugged me the most was that he tried to reconnect with me, but never once said he was sorry for what he did. It's like he didn't even see anything wrong with his actions and thought he was totally right to choose Peter over me, even though I'm his own kid, his son. And that's the main reason I never got back to him. Even when he told me how sad he was for not being part of my wedding. He texted saying he wished me and Haley nothing but happiness forever, which kind of made me feel a bit guilty for a second. But then I remembered he still hadn't said sorry for everything, and that stopped me from feeling bad for him. It was clear he didn't feel bad enough to say sorry to me. He kept sending texts, even after the wedding thing, but I still didn't reply. He never called, which I thought was odd because he could have if he really wanted to, but maybe that was too much for him. Then everything changed a few weeks back when my son was born, and we shared the news on Facebook. That's when I got a call from my dad, the first one in almost 10 years. I answered, not really sure what to expect. Part of me was hoping this would be the moment he finally said sorry, maybe because he wanted to meet his grandson. But guess what? I was let down again. He didn't say sorry or even talk about all the stuff that went down between us. Instead, he just talked about how upset he was that I got married and had a kid, and he was missing out on all of it. He said his heart was breaking, and he really hoped I could just let bygones be bygones and not make such a big deal out of everything that had happened over the last decade. I really couldn't wrap my head around how he thought I was blowing things out of proportion. I mean, come on. He literally chose to pay for my cousin's college instead of mine. Because of that decision, I had no choice but to quit college and start from scratch, working my way up from the very bottom. If I hadn't had to leave school, I would have been way ahead in life. But nope, I didn't get that chance. All thanks to him. And it's not like I was slacking off in school or anything. I was doing pretty okay, you know? I wasn't the top of my class, but definitely not at the bottom either. I wasn't good enough to get a scholarship, but certainly not so bad that he should just toss me aside for Peter. When I heard from him after all this time, I lost it. I told him straight up how much I regretted even picking up the phone, wishing I'd just blocked him ages ago because all this while, I was stupidly waiting for an apology. But that apology? Yeah, it was never going to happen. I finally got that. For someone to say sorry, they actually have to feel sorry first. And it was clear as day he didn't feel a shred of regret. He even tried to argue with me about it, calling me unfair. Can you believe that? Coming from him, who doesn't even seem to grasp the basic idea of fairness. In a moment of total anger, I blurted out that maybe I was actually his second son, and that Peter must be his first, considering how differently he treated us. And oh boy, did I push the boundaries there. I hinted that maybe there was something sketchy going on behind the scenes, like an affair between him and my aunt, which could explain why Peter was born. That might have been pushing the accusation a bit too far, but it just slipped out in the heat of the moment, fueled by all the unfairness I felt from his favoritism. After I told my dad to go chat with his other son and not to waste my time anymore, I just hung up on him. Looking back, I think I might have messed up because the next thing I knew, it wasn't my dad reaching out, but my aunt. She sent me a text saying what I had said was way out of line. She was upset because she felt I dragged her into this mess on purpose just to get back at my dad. She mentioned that my words had hurt not just one but three people, and they all thought I owed them an apology for crossing a line. I haven't texted back yet, mostly because I'm not sure what to even say. To be honest, I don't get why my dad had to go and spill the beans about our private chat to everyone. It was just between me and him, and I didn't want anyone else to get mixed up in this. I said those things in the heat of the moment, aiming them at him, not intending to hurt anyone else. I really don't care much about how my dad or uncle feel about this, but I do feel bad about upsetting my aunt. She's always been fair to both Peter and me, never picking sides or comparing us, even though Peter is her kid. She could have easily played favorites like the rest, but she didn't. She's genuinely nice, and I feel terrible for making her feel bad. Dragging her and Peter into this mess, especially with that comment about Peter being my dad's son, was out of line. I talked it over with my wife, and she didn't take sides, but did mention that what I said was pretty harsh, especially since my aunt was always kind to me. I'm thinking I should probably say sorry, but part of me still feels like this whole mess is more on my dad for blabbing, not on me. So does that make me the bad guy for saying what I did about my cousin being my dad's other son? Update 1. So, after about a week of just staring at my aunt's text and not knowing what to say, I finally hit her back with a message. And yep, I said I was sorry for what I blurted out. I tried to explain that my dad's actions really got to me, and in the heat of the moment, I just said something without thinking. I didn't mean to drag her or my uncle into this mess. I told her straight up that I was mad, but I never wanted to make her feel bad. Also, I was kind of surprised that my dad decided to spill the beans about our private chat. I was low-key hoping my dad would catch the hint that I was also a bit upset with him for stirring things up, even if I didn't spell it out for him. I figured my aunt would pass my message along to my uncle and dad. If my dad was paying attention, he'd get that this was my way of saying sorry to her, but not so much to him. Haley thought it was a smart move, apologizing to my aunt but not really to my dad. And honestly, my dad hasn't earned an apology, not with all the stuff he's done. He can try to play it down all he wants, but it doesn't change a thing. Choosing Peter over me, making me quit college, and not once feeling bad about it, yeah, that doesn't sit right with me. So, no apologies for him. As for my uncle, we never really clicked. Even back when I was living with my dad, we weren't close. My aunt was the only one who treated me decently. My uncle, he was all about comparing me and Peter, and like my dad, wasn't there when it mattered. So, let them feel whatever they want. I've said sorry to the one person who deserved it from me. And that's where I draw the line. If she's cool with my apology, great. If not, I'm still okay because I've done my part. It's up to her now to take it or leave it. Update 2. So after what felt like forever, or, 3 whole days, my aunt finally decides to text me back. By then, I was pretty much thinking she'd decided to ghost me or something, but nah, she gets back to me saying she's alright with my apology, which was a relief. But then she throws in this curveball. Apparently, her husband and my dad are still waiting on the edge of their seats for their own apologies because they felt I had dissed them too. Let me be super clear about this. There's no way I'm dishing out apologies like free candy, especially not to them. It's like they've never really been there for me or cared about what I felt. So why should I bother about their feelings now? The only reason I even thought about apologizing to my aunt was because she wasn't like them. She was actually nice to me back when I was a kid. The rest of them, they might as well have been on a different planet for all the warmth they showed me. Plus, my dad always preached about not saying sorry unless you really truly mean it. So guess what? I'm taking his advice to heart. No fake apologies from me because I'm just not feeling it. My aunt seemed a bit peeved at that and tried to lecture me about not caring about other people's feelings, like I'm supposed to just suck it up and play nice. But here's the deal. I couldn't care less if they're upset with me. I spelled it out for her one more time. I'm not about to lose any sleep over this. Right now, my world revolves around my wife and my son, and that's about it. Everyone else? They can go have a pity party without me. I noticed my aunt was ready to keep the text war going, and honestly, I wasn't here for it. So I hit that block button. Haley's hoping we can put this drama to bed, and man, I'm right there with her. But something tells me they're not going to let this go quietly. They seem way too keen on turning this into a whole saga. Update 3. Alright, so here's the scoop. I totally called it. And I can't decide if I'm more like, yay, go me, or just plain annoyed. Peter took it upon himself to throw a bit of a tantrum online, splashing our dirty laundry all over his Facebook. He went all dramatic, claiming I was throwing shade at his folks just because I was jelly of him being the favorite child in my dad's eyes. Honestly, why he thought this was some earth-shattering news to everyone is beyond me. It's not like I've been playing my feelings close to the chest. I've been pretty much an open book about how unfair the whole favoritism thing felt. And let's be real, our so-called rivalry wasn't exactly breaking news to our circle of friends. So Peter trying to make a scene on Facebook was, in my eyes, a whole lot of nothing. He even had the audacity to demand an apology from me, not just to his mom, but also to his dad and mine. I mean, talk about making a mountain out of a molehill, right? I almost let my fingers do the talking and crafted a juicy reply to spill the tea for everyone. But then I took a breath, hit the backspace, and let it all go. I decided not to add fuel to their drama fire because deep down, I knew this was exactly what they were hoping for. They wanted me to dive into the mess, throw some words around, and then watch as they twisted it to make me the bad guy in the saga, even though it was my dad who lit the fuse in the first place. So by choosing to zip it, I effectively put a lid on their drama pot. Haley, being the voice of reason as always, thought I was making the smart move. Jumping into that hot mess wasn't going to do me any favors. I've already extended my olive branch where it mattered, and I've done my part. If they're keen on keeping up their woe is us performance, they can have at it. I'm stepping out of the ring. That's why I hit the block button on Peter. Since our friend circles don't really overlap, it's not like his rants are going to change what the people who truly know me think. They've got the full story. And at the end of the day, that's the bit that counts the most to me. I mean, who needs that kind of drama, right? Better to keep it cool and move on with those who get the real picture. Update 4. Looks like my plan to just ignore Peter's drama-filled post paid off. He actually took it down. Seems like him seeing my buddies, who know the real scoop, threatening to spill my side of the story in the comments, got under his skin. They basically told him to nix the post or face the music with some truth bombs that wouldn't make him or our family look too shiny. Peter must have felt the pressure because he wanted to keep up this perfect image that he, my dad, and my aunt have been trying to show off, all at my expense. So, yup, he ditched the post. But get this, he then slid into all my friends' DMs, trying to warn them they were backing the wrong horse, saying they'd be on the wrong side of history. I mean, come on, as if our little family spat is going to be remembered for ages. That's just him being way too extra. I can't help but feel a bit secondhand embarrassment for him. And honestly, it's kind of cringy that I'm even related to them. They're all acting a level of crazy that's off the charts. But hey, I'm just relieved he stopped spreading our family drama for the whole world to see. If he kept that post up without me biting back, it would have been super awkward. I'm really just crossing my fingers and hoping this is the end of it. I've got zero interest in reopening communication with them or finding out about the next ridiculous thing they decide to do. Like I've been saying, all I want is to chill with my wife and son. I'm so not here for any more of their drama. Update 5. Alright, so it's been nearly a month since I last filled you guys in on what's been happening. First off, I just gotta say a huge thank you for all the support and kind words you've all sent my way. Haley and I seriously appreciate it. It's kinda amazing to know there are folks out there, people we've never even met, who are cheering us on. It really means a lot, and I'm super glad I decided to share what was going on with me here when I was all tangled up in trying to figure things out. So, what's new, you ask? Well, out of the blue, I got an email from my uncle a few days back, and let me tell you, it was a total curveball. I was pretty taken aback that he decided to reach out, especially since things were pretty frosty between us last time we talked. I was this close to just ignoring the email, but Haley was like, maybe you should check it out. If they're getting in touch after all this time, it could be something big. She had a point, so I went ahead and opened it. And honestly, I'm still trying to wrap my head around what I found in that email. So, here's the bombshell. Peter actually is my dad's biological son. Yeah, my aunts, my dad, they really did have that affair, I suspected, which just blows my mind. I'm kind of gutted that my wild guess turned out to be on the money because it means Peter and I are actually related by blood, which is just, ugh. I always held on to the thought that, at the very least, Peter and I weren't related. But nope, turns out we're half siblings, and that's something I can't ever shake off. Now, how did my uncle stumble upon this little family secret? Well, it looks like my dad had swung by their place a while back, aiming to have a chat with my aunt about the whole mess I stirred up, all while my uncle was out grabbing a coffee. So my uncle walked in right as my dad was in the middle of talking about what I had said, that Peter might be his son. My uncle hadn't planned on overhearing this, but once he did, my dad had no choice but to explain the whole thing again. And my dad was acting super weird while telling the story, which made my uncle start wondering what was up. Then, both my dad and my aunt started making a huge deal out of what I said, acting way more offended than they should have been. My uncle knew I was just speaking out of frustration and didn't really mean to accuse anyone seriously, but the way they were reacting, like they were personally attacked, made him start thinking there was more to the story. Their over-the-top reaction was what tipped my uncle off. He figured they were acting way too defensive, which was odd. And then, when they insisted he make that Facebook post about it, even after I'd said sorry, it just didn't sit right with him. He felt something was off, but knew better than to try talking it out with my dad, who wouldn't want to hear it. And he was too wary to bring it up with his wife in case he was barking up the wrong tree. So my uncle decided to take a step that hadn't crossed anyone else's mind. He reached out to my mom to see if she could shed any light on the whole situation. Finding her wasn't easy, but after some effort, he managed to connect with her a few weeks back. And boy, did she have news for him. She confirmed the whole mess. Turns out she never really felt cut out for motherhood in the first place. Learning about my dad's affair just gave her the perfect out she was looking for. This also explained how she managed to dodge paying child support and walked away with a pretty decent chunk of change in the settlement. But yeah, she decided to spill the beans to my uncle because, after all these years, it seemed like the right time to come clean. My uncle filled me in on all of this through a pretty snarky email where he sort of thanked me for being a pain because that's what led him to uncover his wife's affair. Now they're headed for a divorce. My dad's not talking to either of them anymore, and Peter's decided to cut ties with the whole lot of us. And then, in a kind of bitter way, my uncle said he hopes I'm happy now. And you know what? I actually am. For the first time in a long while, I feel like a huge weight has been lifted off my shoulders. Girlfriend wanted an open relationship, so I broke up with her. Now she wants to get back together. I'm a 23-year-old guy who was in a relationship with a girl the same age as me. We had been dating for about 4 years, which is a pretty long time, especially at our age. Things seemed normal until the last month we were together. For nearly a month, she seemed okay, just acting normal. But then, suddenly, she decided to have a serious talk. During this talk, she dropped a bombshell on me. She wanted us to start having an open relationship. This means she wanted both of us to have the freedom to date other people while still dating each other. This idea was a total shock to me. From the start of our relationship, I'd always thought we were exclusive, just the two of us, committed only to each other. That was my understanding and expectation. When she suggested changing this fundamental part of our relationship, it felt like she wasn't the same person I had fallen in love with. Because of this huge shift in what she wanted, I ended the relationship immediately. For me, being in a relationship means sharing a special bond with just one person, not multiple people. If she and I didn't agree on this basic principle anymore, it seemed clear that we didn't have a future together, especially considering how she was acting before she brought this up. Now, here's where it gets a bit messy. Even though I felt I couldn't trust her anymore because suggesting an open relationship felt like a betrayal of what we had agreed upon, she started reaching out to me after the breakup. She's been sending texts and voicemails, really upset, crying and asking me to reconsider, claiming she didn't really mean what she said about wanting an open relationship. Since then, I've been feeling a mix of emotions. Some of my friends and people I talk to think I might have reacted too quickly. They believe I was a bit harsh for ending things so abruptly without sitting down to talk more about it or to work through potential misunderstandings. This has made me wonder if I did jump to a decision too fast. So I'm stuck thinking about whether I made the right choice or if I should have handled the situation differently. It's tough because I felt strongly about what I wanted, but now I'm being told that maybe there was a different way to approach the situation. What's your take on this? Did I act too quickly, or was my reaction justified given the circumstances? Now for the type of comments before reading the update. Nope. You went with your instincts. You were correct. If she wants to sleep with other people, she can do it without you. I don't understand why she feels like she needs you. You gave her exactly what she wanted. Why isn't she happy? Exactly, she got what she wanted. A pass to sleep with other people. Just without the boyfriend. Good for you. She's probably had someone in mind. It didn't work out. Now she's crawling back. You know what you want in a relationship and she's not it. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if I found out who she had cheated, either emotionally or physically already, and was just trying to use it as an excuse. I can't trust a person who suddenly wants to turn a monogamous relationship into an open poly-own, especially with the way she was acting the month before all this happened. I spend too much time on this sub in situations like yours, almost always seems to start with a partner getting a wandering eye and wanting to cheat without consequences. So the idea of open relationships just gets brought up. I think your instincts are correct. I would commend you for being put together enough to know what you want and secure enough to not compromise your values. Now for the update. Update. Hello everyone, I thought it would be good to give you an update, especially since a few of you messaged me asking for one. When I first posted, I really didn't anticipate there would be much more to share, particularly so soon. Last time, I shared some of my doubts about my ex possibly cheating on me, but now I've got a bit more to tell. That uneasy feeling about the whole situation just wouldn't leave me. Initially, I tried to ignore it, hoping it would fade, but curiosity and a need for clarity took over. I decided to do a bit of detective work. I started asking around, particularly targeting our mutual friends, to see what she had been up to over the past month. I had noticed she'd been acting strangely, and I needed some answers. To my surprise, one of her closest friends, who I didn't expect would reveal much, ended up confirming my worst suspicions. It turned out she had been cheating on me with a cousin of one of our mutual friends. Hearing it straight from someone so close to her made the reality of the situation sink in deep. Feeling a mix of anger and the need for some direct answers, I reached out to the guy she was seeing. I sent him a message on Facebook, and he quickly replied, suggesting we meet in person to talk about everything. We agreed to meet at a local pub, a neutral place where we could discuss the situation openly. When we met, he was incredibly apologetic and transparent. He explained that he had no idea she was already in a relationship. He only found out about me the day she called me trying to get back together. That's when he decided to break things off with her. He seemed genuinely regretful about the whole ordeal. I found it hard to hold any resentment towards him. He appeared honest and really sorry about how things turned out. On a lighter note, he insisted on buying the drinks during our conversation, which was a kind gesture. I ended up learning that not only is he a decent person, but he's also quite a stand-up guy, good-looking and respectful, which made me consider briefly the idea of getting back at my ex by seeing him myself. But of course, that thought was more about amusement than actual intent. Now, with all this new information, I feel a sense of closure that was missing before. I've taken the step to block my ex on all social media and communication platforms. I'm in the process of packing up her belongings that were left at my place. I plan to mail everything back to her to ensure she has no reason to visit. I'm even tempted to leave a cheeky note in the box, something like, "Mark was nice, too bad you lost him too," just to twist the knife a bit more. Sorry if this post seems a bit scattered. I'm typing this on my phone, and between my clumsy thumbs and a few drinks, it's not the easiest task. But sharing this with you and getting your insights feels really good. Thanks for being such a supportive community. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts. Cheers! Story 2. Am I the a-hole for not allowing my daughter to attend my best friend's wedding to her biological father? I know how bad that sounds. And I'm starting to admit this is fully based on my feelings of betrayal, hurt, and disgust. I, 27 female, have an amazing daughter, age 12 female, and I'm married to the most amazing man. T, 27 male in the world. My daughter and I have been living in Japan for the last 9 years, the home country of my husband. I returned to the UK for the first time since leaving this month, August 20th, 23, to meet my nephew. My best friend are 26 female, and I have been best friends since we were 3 years old. She has always been my rock through everything, especially when I was pregnant with my daughter. As you can see, I gave birth to my daughter when I was 15. Her biological father, D, 33 mil, has had no interaction with either of us since the night I got pregnant, nor ever showed any interest until now to address the elephant in the room. D raped me when I was 15 and he was 21. I come from a very religious family, aka my father is a deacon. There was no option, however. I absolutely adore my daughter and do not equate her to that horrible experience. She saved me, and I have spent every day loving her, thanks to a lot of supportive therapy and her just being the most loving little sweet peach out there. A few other things to note. She doesn't know the nature of her conception as to how do you explain that to any child under any circumstances. My husband officially adopted my daughter, and their bond is incredibly strong. They are not biologically related, but the love and mutual adoration they share are undeniable and profound. During a court agreement that was part of his sentencing, her biological father, D, relinquished all his parental rights in exchange for a lighter sentence, effectively stepping out of her life for good. Now, on to the main events of my recent trip back to the UK, which has been a roller coaster of emotions. I decided to make the journey to meet my newborn nephew and thought it would be the perfect opportunity to surprise my family and friends with a visit. I planned this trip in secret, sharing my plans with only my mother to keep the surprise intact. The reactions were absolutely priceless. Joy, shock, and pure happiness from everyone. It was a delightful experience, particularly for my daughter who is relishing the attention and love she's receiving from her aunts. They were all overjoyed to see her and spend quality time with her. Amid this happy reunion, I also had the idea to surprise another person, my longtime friend R. I thought it would be wonderful to catch up with her unexpectedly, so I traveled to her house, filled with excitement. However, the moment I rang the doorbell, I was confronted with a shocking and painful sight. The man who answered the door was none other than the person who had caused me tremendous pain in the past. Initially, I was confused and thought I had made a mistake with the address, but then R appeared, greeting him affectionately as Babe. My heart sank. The situation unfolded like a scene from a cliched teen drama, where the protagonist discovers a betrayal by her best friend and boyfriend. I knew R had been dating someone new, and she had promised to introduce him to me in person. Trusting her completely as my best friend, I never imagined she could be involved with him. This revelation felt like a betrayal not just of friendship, but of all the shared confidences and support we had exchanged over the years. Since that day, I've been reeling from the shock and hurt, struggling to come to terms with her choices. In the days following the incident, R has been persistently trying to contact me, sending messages and calling, eager to explain herself and apologize for the distressing way I found out about their relationship. After days of ignoring her attempts, I finally decided to hear her out. Although I'm still deeply hurt, I agreed to listen because part of me hoped for some sort of reasonable explanation that could mend the rift between us. During our conversation, R expressed her apologies, but so many emotions and questions remain unresolved for me. The discussion about the potential forgiveness for my friend R and her relationship with my ex, who had deeply hurt me in the past, has been extremely hard for my husband and me. He is fully aware of the distress this man caused in my life, and understandably, we were both very upset. During a recent call with R, as we were navigating through our tumultuous conversation, she dropped yet another bombshell. While my daughter was still in the room, R casually mentioned preparing for her upcoming wedding, hinting at dress fittings for the wedding party. I was confused and asked her to clarify, hardly believing what I was hearing. Shockingly, she explained that she wanted my daughter to be the flower girl at her wedding, as she was going to marry the man who is my daughter's biological father. This was something we had whimsically planned as children, that our kids would participate in each other's weddings. However, given the current circumstances, I found the idea utterly inappropriate and painful. I firmly told her that under no circumstances would my daughter be involved in that wedding. R accused me of being petty and jealous and argued that I couldn't stop her real dad from being a part of her life, a statement that felt like a low blow considering the complex and painful history involved. Since that conversation, which ended abruptly this morning, we haven't spoken. To add to the emotional turmoil, mutual friends have started messaging me, saying that R is devastated, accusing me of ruining her wedding plans. They seem to think I'm overreacting, but I feel strongly that my decision is not only morally justified, but also legally sound. I believe in protecting my daughter from potentially harmful emotional situations, especially involving a man who has such a troubling past with us. The idea of having my daughter participate in a ceremony that celebrates the union of R and this man is something I cannot accept. As I process these events, I am trying to stay firm in my beliefs and protect my family's well-being, despite the pressure and backlash from those around me. It's a challenging time, but my priority is the emotional and psychological health of my daughter and ensuring that the decisions I make are in her best interest. So I'm putting my most personal story online and asking, am I the a-hole? Now for the update. Update 1. Just to prevent any disappointment, this isn't a proper update, but more so a post. For more information with a little update at the end, you can skip to that if you want to. First, thank you to those who took time to assure me that I'm not, in fact, crazy for believing myself to be in the right. Second, to those saying that this is fake, please manifest that harder, so I wake up from this nightmare. Third, my bad for the title. I also would have taken it as my best friend marrying her own dad. He answers the questions I've seen/received, moving to Japan at 18. I'm in a very lucky and privileged position to have an uncle who moved to Japan following his deployment in the Navy many years ago. Additionally, my parents wanted me to finish high school in sixth form before shipping me off to the other side of the world to avoid judgment from the community. If they could have just sent me to Neptune, they would have. Plea deal. I use this term as it is more commonly known, but if you want an accurate depiction of what happened, I'll do my best to explain that I'm not a lawyer and be talking about a period of my life. I did my best to forget D was charged with the statutory rape of a minor, which is a Category 1 for harm because it resulted in a pregnancy. It was also considered Category B for culpability because it wasn't premeditated and was played off, if the age of consent was lower. This wouldn't be an issue type of thing. There are not plea deals in the UK, but there are plea bargains, which are used to encourage people to plead guilty. So there is no trial or shorter trial if it's already began through lower, lesser charges or reduced sentences. There was other factors involved. He pled guilty and had previous arrests or convictions, had a letter from a psychiatrist saying that he lacked maturity due to some disorder, and he showed remorse during the hearing because of this. His charge was reduced to a Category 2 harm and Category B culpability case, sentenced to 5 years in prison, placed on sex offenders register until he was notified of being removed. He served around 3.5 years of that sentence before being released and was on the sex offenders register until last year sometime because of a review showed he had changed or something. I'm not really sure, my friend explained it to me today, but we're like 3 rows down the grapevine at this point, so take that with a pinch of salt. 3 deacons. There are around 738 active deacons in the UK currently. My father is not one of them. Hasn't been since 2019 as he has been living in the US, looking after my grandmother. Not that I have to explain that currently only 2 of my 4 sisters live in the UK, with another living in Sweden to study, and another in the US. I recognize completely the privilege we have to live all over the world. If this means you think I'm lying, then I repeat, please keep manifesting that. So I no longer have to deal with this. For I am many things, but my daughter is my whole world and I will do anything to protect her. I was not here to see if I should allow her to go to the wedding. I had already decided that there was no chance in hell that was happening. Don't call me a bad mother. Everything I have done has been what I believe to be in her best interest. 5. My BF was the first person I told about what D had done to me. It was her and her mum who took me to the police station. It was her who sat with me crying in the school toilets when I was being sick. It was her who watched all the videos sent to me by the baby support class. I don't know what change she has been going through a lot, facing many issues through COVID, but nothing I can think to explain this change. Update 2. My husband has been working on changing her flight tickets because there's been some trouble with the air traffic control over in the UK. This means the planes can't take off and land as they normally would, so changing flights has been tricky. He hasn't been able to fix it just yet, but we're still trying to figure out a way around this issue. I've been talking to our lawyer too because I wanted to make sure that no one could legally challenge us over our family situation. He confirmed that legally, we're in the clear, which is a relief. But I can be a bit of a worrier and tend to think about every possible thing that could go wrong, so even with the good news, I find myself still feeling anxious. Now, about my daughter, she's reaching a really sensitive age where kids start to feel more deeply about things. She has some idea that something upsetting happened in the past, but I haven't told her the full story yet. The truth is, she was born from a very distressing event, and I've been careful not to tell her that directly because I never want her to feel unwanted or unloved. Because it's such a delicate time, my husband and I agree that we need to start being more open with her. I've already set up an appointment for her to see a child psychologist once we're back from our trip. This will give her a safe space to talk about her feelings, and she can choose if she wants us to be there during these discussions or if she'd rather talk privately. Dealing with my own trauma over the years has been tough. I've realized that by delaying this conversation, I was more so protecting myself from reliving those painful memories. I thought I was doing it for her, but now I understand it was also for me. We've taken steps to ensure that the person who hurt me cannot contact us anymore. We've blocked him on our phones and social media. For the time being, while we're still in the UK, she will always be with either my husband, my mother, or me. I really want to thank everyone for their supportive words. Though it's been a challenging time and my mind seems to be constantly buzzing with worries, I'm focused on being strong and providing a stable, loving environment for my daughter. Update 3. Hi there. I never thought that I'd be the one of those people doing an update on a Reddit thread, but here we are. Welcome back to what is hopefully the final update needed for this horrific experience. First of all, I want to thank you all for your words of support and those reaching out to me privately and on the comments. I believe I've read most of them, but there were so many I couldn't reply to all. Second, we're back in Japan. Have never felt so warm. We arrived back this morning and my in-laws being godsends picking us up about awful our honor. The full update and everything that is to come. My husband and I sat down with our daughter and explained that we'd be leaving early, and honestly, that was so difficult in itself that I almost backed out explaining everything to her about DH, which she is honestly the most amazing human in the world. It felt as if she was the one getting me through it. Her and I had the conversation as my husband fulfilled the promise to my brother-in-law to make his famous pad Thai before we left. The conversation itself wasn't that bad. Turned out she was already privy to some information that it was SCA related. My father, the delightful man that he is, explained last Christmas that some sins are easier to forgive, and I'm not exactly sure on the wording he used, but essentially warned her that my bastard childbirth was forgiven by God because it was forced upon me. But she needs to stay pure to be led into heaven. I had heard part of the conversation, but not the full thing. Got into an argument with him about the way he speaks to my child and how he's not to force his beliefs onto her as I refuse to raise my daughter the same way we were raised. This is not an invitation to voice or religious beliefs or opinions. You do no judgment here. Essentially, after his comment, her own very sneaky research, she put two and two together, matched my age, and concluded the nature of her conception without telling me. Obviously, for me to confirm it, that was a whole other thing. We both went through the 5 stages of grief in that short time. I apologized for keeping her in the dark, and this conversation will obviously continue throughout the years. But on her terms, she's a bright girl. She is very aware of things around her, and I know that she will go on to do amazing things, most trying to prepare myself for any questions, arguments, or issues she brings to me. I expect that once we settle back home, there will be further emotions, and I'm willing to work through my own trauma in order to help her through hers and my husband. He is the greatest support either of us could have. She has her consultation with the therapist on Thursday. She wants us all to go together, and then she can decide on what course she wants to take. From then on out, she's just been catching up on her sleep yesterday and today, and without going into the details of what went down with our, she understands not to reach out to her, and if she receives anything from her, to tell me or her dad straight away. She pushed for a few answers, but my husband, working his usual magic, promising her ice cream, encouraged her to settle for the very basic answer of your mom, and had a falling out. And it's pretty bad. She's smart enough though, so that answer won't work for long, but it gives me time to discuss it with my own therapist and the child therapist. So we'll see where to go from here. I've had no communication with our or anyone. He reached out to me to complain that I ruined her wedding. One friend went as far as to confront me at the pharmacy on Friday, but luckily my sister was ready to fight and he backed off. No one knew we were leaving other than my immediate family, so there was no hassle there. I truly hope that one day I'll understand what R has done, what has happened to her and her former friendship to lead to this. But alas, for now, it remains unknown and truly hope. This is the end of the saga, and we can start moving forward. And beginning with my daughter's journey of recognizing she is not the product of a hateful and violent experience, but instead the product of love, beauty, and comfort given to her by her father and me. Sorry for the boring ending, but it's my life. So I'm not actually sorry as I am over any type of drama. But thank you to those who cared and reached out. May none of you reading this ever feel this betrayal, hurt, or destruction. Story 3. Am I the a-hole for not taking down our 12-foot skeleton because a neighbor's son who was afraid of it? So we moved into this cool new neighborhood around April, and I've been buzzing with excitement about Halloween ever since. One of my big dreams was to put up a massive 12-foot tall skeleton. You've probably seen these giants online. They're pretty iconic and absolutely massive. Fast forward to September, I couldn't contain my excitement anymore and decided to put up the skeleton at the beginning of the month, even though Halloween was still a ways off. Our street loved it. People chuckled when they walked by, and some local teenagers even made it a photo op spot. My next-door neighbor caught the Halloween spirit from it too, and started planning his own decorations to complement the giant skeleton. However, not everything was smooth sailing. A few blocks away, there's a younger kid who walks past our house on his way back from school. It turns out, he finds the giant skeleton terrifying. Every time he sees it, he gets really upset and starts crying. His mom, hoping to ease his fear, came over one day to talk to me. She was very polite about it and asked if there was any chance I could take the skeleton down because she felt it was a bit too much for her son. To be honest, I never meant for my Halloween decor to actually scare anyone. I'm not into the whole spooky horror side of Halloween. My vibe is more playful and fun. I like things that make people laugh, not scream. The skeleton, with its oversized frame and goofy grin, was meant to be a silly addition, not a nightmare inducer. Plus, I'm totally not the type to get caught up in the darker, edgier stuff like true crime podcasts that seem to be all the rage. I wrote about this whole situation while sipping on a pumpkin spice latte, PSL for short, which is pretty much as lighthearted and autumnal as it gets. I'm actually more likely to be watching an episode of Gilmore Girls, just a cozy, feel-good show, than delving into mysteries or thrillers. So, in my little Halloween tale, there's a mix of fun, community spirit, and a bit of neighborly negotiation. It's all part of the seasonal excitement and trying to balance everyone's happiness, including us scared little kids. Halloween is about community and fun, and sometimes that means adjusting along the way to keep everyone smiling, or at least not crying. I'm into the fun side of Halloween, and it's similar to how I enjoy Taylor Swift, pumpkin spice lattes, and maybe a touch of true crime, though I'm actually not really into the true crime scene. It's a bit too intense for me. I joke about being part-time basic in a world where loving cozy autumn vibes is seen as typical or cliché, from adoring fall drinks to binge-watching feel-good shows. But then things got complicated with one of my neighbors. Her son, who is quite young, is genuinely terrified of my skeleton. She approached me, hoping for a compromise. I tried suggesting maybe softening its look with a silly hat or a shirt to make it less intimidating. However, she wasn't satisfied and insisted that I take the skeleton down. I explained how much this decoration means to me, not just as a Halloween prop, but as something that brings me real joy amidst these turbulent times. I mentioned spending $300 on it to highlight how much I'm invested in enjoying it. For me, it wasn't just about the money, it was about my right to enjoy things that make me happy. The conversation took an awkward turn when she hinted that based on the house I bought, money might be tight for us. She tried to appeal to my empathetic side, mentioning that being considerate towards her scared son wouldn't cost me anything. Caught off guard, I didn't have a clever response ready and simply thanked her for her suggestion before going back to my gardening. She didn't just walk away, though. She took a photo of my house, or maybe the skeleton, likely to share on social media or within her mommy groups, probably painting me in a negative light. And now, whenever she walks by, there's this tension, a silent disapproval captured by my doorbell camera. My husband agrees with me. We see no reason to take down the skeleton, especially since the alternative route she could take for her son wouldn't even add much to her walk. So here I am, standing by my giant skeleton, amid a clash of Halloween spirit and neighborly disputes, clinging to the joy it brings me in a world that could surely use a bit more lightheartedness. I think she is being unreasonable and playing up the whole corny mama bear thing. But am I the a-hole?